My name is Ambassador Professor David Kenda Adaka Kikaya. And today's topic, we are going to look at the expanding East Africa community. One would need to understand where it has come from, where we are, and perhaps where we are headed. The East African community started as the East African High Commission, and that was a name that was given by the British colonizers, which took into focus for the British in Eastern Africa, that is Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. That time it was actually Tanganyika and Zanzibar, until Tanganyika and Zanzibar merged into what now we call Tanzania. Yeah, the South African community, as we know it now, has grown from being 3 countries, which is Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. Now we have welcomed Rwanda and Burundi. The newest entrants is South Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. So it is growing. It is growing, and a number of other countries are aspiring to join. So you never know, in another 5-10 years, maybe another country would want to come and join it. But so far, those are the member countries. Yeah, these countries are joining the East African community because in international relations, countries look at what is called state-centrism. State-centrism is basically, it means being state-centered. You are looking at what is your interest in an organization that you want to join, with the people that you want to work with. We talk about bilateral relations. That is, how do you and why do you want to have certain diplomatic relations between a country and a country? In this case, the countries that I have just named, which have joined the East African community, the expanded East African community, have different reasons for joining. Initially, the 3 countries that were together were by and large British colonies in this particular area, and they had a number of services which they shared. They used to be called common service. In fact, it was called the British East African Common Services Organization. And these common services were like post and telecommunication, railways and harbors, East African Airways. So then you had some research organizations, or what is called EAFRO, East African Forest Research Organization. Quite a good number of them. They were working as a corporate entity to share certain facilities that were common and commonly needed by each one of those countries. So if you look at the expanded East African community, take Rwanda and Burundi, for example, who came slightly earlier. They're a hinterland country, and they depend very much for their exports and their imports on those countries in East Africa, which have got a coastal line, and that is Kenya and Tanzania. So it made much more sense that when these countries are negotiating for what is called common services, like things we call tariffs, they are on the table so that they can say what their interest in it is. So there is an economic aspect to it. Traditionally, they would have joined for security reasons. For example, if they've got certain security considerations, that an expanded group is one that can be able to deal with those security issues, then they needed to have a broader union. In this particular case, you could say from a security point of view, if any of the countries have bilateral issues that are antagonistic, they are more likely to listen to another member state within that basket than bringing in someone from outside. First of all, East Africa, we know, we have more or less similar cultural practices. Not to mention the fact that Kiswahili now has been adopted as one of the official languages in the member countries that I have said. Our foods, by and large, are fairly similar. You can eat matoke in Uganda, you can eat the same in Kenya, in Tanzania. So we have similar tastes: potatoes, cassava, sugarcane. We have some cultural related aspects which are common to us. But to me, the main reason why these countries are joining is, by and large, an economic aspect. They are going to trade between themselves. In fact, you find that, like for example, Kenya, our greatest trading partner is actually Uganda, not even Britain or America, as people tend to think. So, if we are trading amongst ourselves, there are a number of issues that arise. And when those issues arise, you are more likely to have them settled internally than, say, having to now to go and look for solutions outside there. So yes, there are a number of reasons why they are joining. Education is another increasing area. We are finding that we have Kenyans studying in Uganda, Ugandans are studying in Kenya, Kenyans in Rwanda, Rwandese in Kenya, Burundi, DRC. Yeah, DRC is providing a very big market. In fact, if you look at all those countries that have now come together, you are talking of around 100 million people. And that's not a very small population at all in terms of products. If you manufacture products and you want to pump them into the market, East African market, you don't have to look for markets beyond that. So that population is a very good and fertile ground for you to grow your economy internally. We are working towards having a common currency. Because you cannot trade unless you have a common currency that you all can agree the value of. And that is something which is in works. A common tariff is also in the works. A number of countries have agreed. If you travel in East Africa, God forbid if you're going to make a phone call to Tanzania or Burundi, it's very, very expensive. But if you make a phone call to Uganda, you make a phone call to Rwanda, it's just like you talk anywhere in Kenya. So you find there are so many advantages. But I understand Tanzania and Burundi are now seriously contemplating lowering their tariffs. Because if you are in Tanzania and you want to call Kenya, for 1 minute is close to 50 shillings, Kenya shillings. Just talk for 1 minute. Compare that with what we have here in Kenya. We are crying about 3 shillings. So you find that there are advantages in coming together and agreeing on certain common tariffs, standardization. The process of joining the East African community starts with each country. Each country has to debate in their own national parliament to bring a bill that we want to join the East African community. These are the reasons why we want to join the East African community. This is what we expect from them. This is what we are giving. So that is agreed at a national level. When it is agreed at a national level, then a formal letter is written to the East African community headquarters, which is in Arusha. And the heads of states at what they call a summit, their summit, when they meet, will then put that on the agenda of their next meeting so that they can now look at that application. And even before they even go for those meetings, they'll meet with their parliament, especially in the cabinet. The cabinet will deliberate over it. If it's something that needs to go to parliament, if they need parliament's approval, in some cases they do need parliament approval, then they take it to parliament. Parliament will deliberate, make amendments, if any, or look at this country wants to join us because of 1, 2, 3. Is this something we can live with? Or do we agree they come in, but we opt out of certain provisions in the Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, that is going to permit? From there is when they now go to the heads of state meetings or summit. Each country will air their views, they'll bring in their misgivings, and then they'll bring in why they feel perhaps it is not necessary for them, for that particular country to be allowed or it should be allowed. I can give you an example. You will ask yourself, how come we were able to accept Sudan, we have accepted DRC, and we have not accepted Somalia just across the border? It's because of the security arrangements again. And Somalia has not really had a stable government. Who do you negotiate with in Somalia? From which state? From what government? That in itself brings instability. But also the fact that Al-Shabaab has been linked very closely with Somalia, whether rightly or wrongly, that's a debate for another day. So there are certain reasons why Somalia has not been allowed in. But all these are discussed at the high level of the member states, heads of states of the countries which are already members of the community. In event that not all heads of states accept the notion or the application of the desiring country, then that matter is set to rest for some time, because that country will have reasons why they are disagreeing to the entry of that other country into the union. So they'll table their reasons, they'll be listened to, they'll be argued out, and then a decision has to be taken. But by and large, it is normally done as a unanimous agreement for another country to agree. It's not a question of the majority agreeing and therefore the minority are at advantage. No, because it is envisaged that from that time when that country is allowed in, that country will deal with all the other countries on an equal basis. So if one of them has a reservation, then they put the application on hold. And I think this also, you could say, could have been the case with Somalia. Mind you, even Sudan, they did not just apply and then they were accepted. There were a number of countries which had reservations in the beginning for very good reasons. And therefore, the joining was suspended. The decision to join was suspended a couple of times until finally, maybe that particular country which had reservations, what they were reserving the acceptance for was rectified by South Sudan, and then they gave their consent for South Sudan to be allowed to be a member. Let's look at the implications of the new expanded East African community. Let's deal with the obvious one. First and foremost is an expanded market for products within the community, and therefore with a high population, as I said, of nearly 100 million, you can be sure you cannot be able to satisfy that market even if you were to produce those things locally. So the idea is here, economic activity, so long as they agree on things like tariffs, the exchange rates, it will jumpstart the economic activity of the member states very fast. Secondly, movement of people in and out. As you know now, between the former East African countries, you just need your ID. You don't even need a passport. With your ID, you can go. But now, even when they issue passports, there's something we are calling the new generation of passport. It's not a Kenya passport. It's an East Africa passport. So you don't need to apply for a visa to go to Uganda or to go to Tanzania or to go to Rwanda or Burundi. You just go with your passport at the border, and it's stamped, and you go in. That is point 2. Point 3 is a political reason. When you have a union like that one, and you want to lobby for a position, say in another organization, for example, the United Nations, first of all, you know that you are starting from a point of 5 countries in Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, and the DRC. 6 countries. You're already starting with 6 points. And if you can convince the 6 heads of state that so and so, we want so and so to go and be to apply for a certain position, you can be sure you are on the right path. And with even staying with that argument, it helps to reduce rivalry. If you find that Kenya has a candidate for a particular position and Burundi also has a candidate, the 3 heads of state can say, look, from East Africa, it will be shameful if we're going to present 2 candidates. So let us look Kenya. Maybe you have enjoyed a little bit of privilege. You have many people in the international organization. See, mwachie huyo ndugu wetu mdogo Burundi apeleke candidate yake. So it helps at a political level to do exactly that. So you can be able to lobby for that country that is desiring for that position. And even your member states can also help you to lobby with their other friends, because we all don't have similar friends. There are certain countries which are, for example, if you look at Rwanda and Burundi and the DRC now, there are formerly what we used to call Francophone countries, which means they belong to the French diaspora, if you like. So they can be able to lobby with their French-speaking partners, especially in West Africa. The Senegalese, the Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, Beninois, and all those other French-speaking countries, better than you would if you are coming from Anglophone countries. So it has a number of advantages. We talked about security. It is also there. We talked about strength. In the way you are perceived in the world. But also, there are certain services which can be provided cost effectively to a larger area than if you are dealing with it as an individual. A very good example is the railway. If the East African countries would have agreed what we now call the SGR to come from Mombasa all the way now up to Kivu in DRC, you can see the costs would be shared better rather than Kenya now is bearing the brunt. Yes, you can argue that it is covering a longer mileage in Kenya than it was going to do in Uganda and also Rwanda, pass through Burundi into DRC. But don't forget that even that distance from Mombasa to the border with the Kenya, that is to say Malaba or Busia, you are a beneficiary. If you're going to get your things to the coast, you're not just going to use your own country's railway. No. So it makes much more economic sense to say we are quoting for a railway from Mombasa to Kivu. The member countries come together and say, how do we cost effectively, proportionately share this cost? And parallel to that argument is the fact that even donor countries now prefer to deal multilaterally. The reason is very simple. Assuming kinaumana hapa Kenya, at least the 3 other countries will continue to repay the loan. So there are quite a number of arguments that bring a lot of benefits to the expanded East Africa community. let's not just assume that everything is positive about the community. There are certain aspects of the community that could adversely affect or some or all the countries. One that comes to mind immediately is the fear of domination. This fear has existed, especially between Kenya and Tanzania, surprisingly, that hawa Kenya wabepari, unajua wamerevuka, wajanja, wakija kufanya business na sisi, huenda watatufinya vibaya. So there is that fear. We also know that in East Africa, there has been certain misgivings with the people who are coming from, for example, DRC. Hii mambo ya magendo ya nini huwa watu wanaongelea juu yake. So these are things which need to be put in check. So the expanded East African community will need of necessity to even have a security or a policing of some sorts. We know that there's something called Interpol. Perhaps an equivalent of Interpol will be necessary, controlled by East Africa from Arusha, with specific responsibilities that touch on the East African countries. It is also going to mean that the parameters of dealing with crime within the area are going to be institutionalized in national laws. What most people don't know is that in Arusha, we have an East Africa court. It's a very big establishment. To me, it looks as if that court mandate is going to be enhanced a lot more to deal now with an expanded East Africa with prospective issues, perhaps of a criminal nature, that are going to arise. And not only just a criminal nature. If there are any business, say, related issues that touch on two countries, that particular court of arbitration will need to be enhanced in order to be able to deal with those particular cases. So the expansion of the South African community has positives, I think, but one should not forget that there are certain negatives which need to be kept on the radar. And the strength of that union will only be based on how you address the negativities. Because with the negativities, they don't have to be humongous for them to make the countries go asunder. And those ones, there should be a specific office that focuses specifically on those. Criminality is not the only one in that particular category. Even political rivalry. And this is why we are saying when it comes to desire to apply for certain positions, instead of showing our rivalry in public, we can settle that internally. So there are those areas where they'll have to be kept on the radar for that expanded community to hold and to gel.